Okay, so you're kind of playing games. I mean, I think the Congress deserves to know, after you all screwed up with 10,000 soldiers, whether you fired anyone, whether you suspended anyone, whether anyone got a demotion in rank.
I can't look you in the eye and guarantee that it's not happening in other locations. At this time, we have no information to suggest improperly prepared anti-terrorism materials are being used anywhere else in the Army.
I don't think you're deserving of a 4-star, given the fact that you can't even come before Congress to ensure that we have accountability and oversight.
So General Matlock, after years of the Army wrongly telling over 10,000 soldiers that someone having a pro-life license plate might make them a terrorist, was anybody fired?
Representative, again, the chain of command is the responsible agent for adverse actions or personnel actions, and I'm not going to comment on what they've done or not done. That resides with the chain of command.
Well, don't you think that has failed? Because wasn't the obligation to stop this nonsense also with the chain of command?
The chain of command took upon receiving the report of the poorly developed training materials, the chain of command took immediate action.
I tell you, in the United States Army, 8 years might be immediate, but it doesn't seem all that immediate to me. I mean, does years and years of doing this seem like the chain of command was immediately responsive to this errant action to you?
Representative, we recognize that is a very long period of time.
Okay, so we'll dispense with immediate then. Okay, so you're kind of playing games. I mean, I think the Congress deserves to know, after you all screwed up with 10,000 soldiers, whether you fired anyone, whether you suspended anyone, whether anyone got a demotion in rank, or what the consequence was. Like, you don't get to just say it's our chain of command and it's not Congress's business when you screw up to this magnitude. Like, does that not register with you?
Representative, it does. That's why I'm here today.
Right, so just tell us, did anyone get fired, suspended, demoted? Any of those three?
Representative, again, those training materials were very poorly prepared.
Right, but we don't
believe, they were used
so
for a
this is what's going on, General. We don't believe that your chain of command approach is going to be sufficient to deal with this if you play hide the ball on what the consequence was. And it sort of seems to be a DOD-wide problem that, that people who express policy or scripture aligned with Christian faith get demonized and attacked. I mean, we saw that in the United States Navy when the SEALs wanted to have an exception for the vaccine, and then your own Inspector General had to say that they were improperly treated. We saw it in the Marine Corps when someone posted a Bible verse and was then subjected to disciplinary action. And now here in the Army, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I'm at a loss because they won't even tell us what they've done. Now I'm wondering how this emerged. It was in 2017. Who was the Chief of Staff of the Army then?
And I believe in 2017, General Milley was the Chief of Staff of the Army.
Oh, well, interesting. Do you think this is happening elsewhere, this kind of stuff?
Representative, in the United States Army, no, I don't think it is.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'd do, Mr. Chairman. I would demand answers to the questions that we're asking. I don't even know how to use my last minute and a half of time because they're not going to answer the question on what consequence. And if the consequence isn't public, it doesn't function as a sufficient deterrent. Like what you guys do when you allow this to happen for years with no consequence, and then 8 years later or whatever, when you're called out on it, you say, well, there's a consequence, but we won't tell you what it is, then you increase the recidivism of this type of behavior. And not for nothing, but it's one of the reasons why in some of the key demographic areas that the Army is traditionally drawn from to fill its ranks, you're struggling right now. So I think we're owed answers to these questions, and frankly, I would start fencing money at the United States Army until we get those answers. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Look, I want to go back to something that my colleague, Mr. Gaetz, was talking about that you responded, where he asked, do you think this is going on anywhere else in the actual forces? Your comment was, I don't think it's happening in other places in the Army. Think. But you don't know for certain, do you? Because you allowed this to go on for almost 7 years, correct?
I can't look you in the eye and guarantee that it's not happening in other locations. At this time, we have no information to suggest improperly prepared anti-terrorism materials are being used anywhere else in the Army.
So we hear it right here, Mr. Chairman. He's literally saying that we have no idea whether or not it's going on in other locations in the Army. We have no idea whether or not this is continuing as it has for 7+ years. It's almost like Lucy in the football, where they're essentially just going ahead and saying, well, we found it in this location after 7+ years and 10,000 soldiers, but we're unaware if it's still going on in other locations because we haven't done our jobs to ensure that it's not. Look, I'm a non-commissioned officer from the United States military. I served in the Army proudly, and I'm grateful for your service. But you're sitting here running a political game, making comments like, well, I can't talk about the chain of command. Okay, fine. We're not asking to dox the individuals, to ask for the names of the commanders, to say exactly what the overarching goal or what has been happened, whether they were demoted, whether there was some type of removal of command. But can you at least answer whether or not UCMJ action has at least taken place for those to be held responsible?
Representative, on the training conduct, I'm 100% confident in the Army chain of command across all Army organizations that they work diligently every day to produce the right training outcomes for each of their missions.
But yet you don't know whether or not it's actually being implemented, as we didn't know what was being trained for 7+ years, correct?
Again, my confidence in the Army chain of command across the entire globe is unwavering.
Well, and I ask again, as all my colleagues have tried to ask for these answers, this is a bipartisan request from Congress who funds our national defense. Are you aware of any UCMJ action being utilized to ensure not corrective training action? That's not holding someone accountable. Let's just be clear. When I was a non-commissioned officer and I smoked someone for basically making a mistake and had them push or flutter kick the whole time, I called that corrective action, but that's not to the severity of what we're discussing here, where 10,000 soldiers were literally trained that being pro-life is an extremist act. So is there or is there not any UCMJ action which has been held? And I don't want the political rhetoric of saying this is a chain of command issue, because you, sir, are above that chain of command at the end of the day. You wear those stars proudly on your shoulders that you've earned to ensure the oversight and the actual leading of our troops. Is that not correct?
Representative, I've been a commander many times. I'm not currently in the chain of command or a commander.
But do you know whether or not UCMJ action was utilized?
Representative,
are you aware of that knowledge?
I've made it clear that I'm not going to comment on those.
So then what's the point, Mr. Chairman, in having these hearings if we don't even have someone who's willing to testify to give us the answers? This is completely pointless, sir. I'll be honest with you. I don't think you're deserving of a 4 star, given the fact that you can't even come before Congress to ensure that we have accountability and oversight. That is a key and critical thing. My young corporals and E5s know that. Unbelievable. You've stated that the training conducted at Fort Bragg, claiming pro-life groups are extremists, was inaccurate. However, this training was somehow conducted for 7 years before any oversight was exercised. How do you plan to implement oversight or a policy for oversight moving forward?
The training was conducted at Fort Liberty. It was a very long.
It'll always be
period
Fort Bragg
of
to
time.
me.
And that length of time is almost unexplainable. I'm confident that if this issue had been identified at any point during that period of time, the Army would have taken immediate corrective action like we did.
But here's my problem. How can the Army properly define what is extremist when the DoD education activity requires students and staff to be educated on radical racial and sexual ideas, while TRICARE limits a parent's ability to view their children's medical records and allows children to receive bodily mutilation or abortion services without parental consent or notification?
Representative, again, on the training that was conducted at Fort Liberty, there's no excuse for the poor quality of that
Mr.
training.
Chairman, we're clearly not going to go anywhere here, so with that, I yield back.